If you're watching the replay, go ahead and say hashtag replay in the chat, and hopefully we will get started soon. Um, First off, what I wanted to say is, you know, thanks for being here. Thanks for being here in the group. And, you know, the group is called the Burnt Out Entrepreneur. And if you're watching this on LinkedIn, um, you know, there's a link that I'm going to drop to join for you guys to join the Facebook group. But yeah, I'm so glad you guys are here today, whether you're watching live or on the replay, because this masterclass is one that I've been wanting to teach for kind of a long time because it's what I've seen, right? I've seen no matter how big or small a launch is, and I'm talking about whether it's, just the, you know, I'm calling it a tiny solopreneur launch only because I have seen bigger launches that, like generate five figures, six-figure launches, and having to manage those is just on a different scale. But the steps are the same, and the fears, the mindset blocks are still the same. They're just on a bigger, different scale. And we'll get into some of that here in a few. But before we, you know, before we get into that, like what I want you guys to get really is a deeper understanding of what a launch entails. I talked about it a little yesterday in the live in the group, how to overcome those fears and really how to take your launches to the next level. And at the end, we're going to be going over the 6-week lit up launch intensive, and it is working with me for six weeks inside and intensive. We're going to have a Voxer chat, and you're going to also get access to a launch mapping session, which is valued at $500. That's how much it normally is, but it's included in this package. You're going to get a messaging and framework session where we're going to look at your messaging. We're going to look at the framework of your offer, and we're going to also have a launch wrap up session. So, right. And this offer really is for people who are going through an active launch or preparing to go into an active launch because it's a 6-week container. It's an intensive because I want to be with you in the trenches as you're going through a launch or as you're preparing for a launch. Because honestly, that's my sweet spot. And we can tackle not only the strategy, tech, yes. Some of it, like if I'm familiar with the software that you're using, I've used a lot of different softwares, but if I'm familiar with the software that you're using, right, we can dive a whole lot deeper on like tech specific strategies, which is good. But I really want to dive deeper on some of the mindset issues, the fears, like the things that we're going to talk about today while we are in that coaching container. So just keep an eye out. I'm going to talk about it at the end of this. Um, but yeah, without further ado, let me introduce myself because some of you are watching it here in the Facebook group. Some of you are watching it live on YouTube. Some of you are watching it live on LinkedIn. And for those of you who don't know me or who kind of know me, right, my name is Kylie Ota, and I am a um, launch launch management expert. Say that 3 times fast, but really, managing launches is my sweet spot. And I figured out that launch management and project management was kind of my sweet spot on accident. I started managing what we call like shutdowns and turnarounds in the oil and gas industry. And with like with the gifts that God gave me with the gift of administration and the gift of optimization, because if there's anything that I dislike the most, it's lack of efficiency. Like I have the hate to say it, but when it comes to certain things, I have the worst patience. You can ask my husband. He's super patient and I'm really not. And I'm like how can we speed this up? Like there must be some kind of efficiency. And so when I got into that project management world in oil and gas, oh my gosh, so much red tape to cut through. And I was like, how can we speed up this process? Because I really don't like any of this red tape. And when I got into the entrepreneurial world, just a lot of my clients had bought into these guru launch methods. And I'm going to start talking about that more here on social media and things like that. But a lot of that stems from when I was in oil and gas. We had, I mean, it's oil and gas. Safety is a number one concern. So as long as the people and the environment were safe, like that was the key result. Yes, we had to like complete projects and make sure we, hit certain things along the project timeline. But if we had injured the environment or people in the process, all of those results were pretty much null and void. Like it was not successful if we got anyone hurt or if we damaged the environment in any way. So um, the red tape was kind of necessary to make sure everyone was safe, but at the same time, as someone who loves efficiency, I was looking at it and saying, my gosh, like there's so many things in this process that we can clean up or speed up or whatever. And I was always looking for ways to optimize these events. And I pretty much brought that into, when I became a project manager for all of these marketing agencies and business coaches. And it, and that's actually how I got my first gig as a project manager for a big online coach. I was connected to the OBM or the COO actually because it was a bigger business. And I was just looking at the inefficiencies in their business and I was like, you could like what it's the same question I asked in corporate, like, why are we doing it that way? Like this is not necessary. Why are we doing it that way? And the questions that I was bringing up and the concerns, like we were just friends having lunch, coffee, whatever, and every time it would come up, it's like, oh, like, why are you doing it that way? Why don't you try this, this, and this, and this? And like I wasn't trying to be a strategist. I was trying to just help a friend out to help alleviate some of that burnout that I could see, feel. And she was confessing, she's like, I'm so burnt out right now. We're going through a launch. And at this time, like I had no idea what a launch was. But as she started explaining it, I was like, oh, we do these too, but it's not marketing based, right? It's more project based. I was like, oh yeah, like I know how to manage these. Like I've been managing these for a long time. So that's how I got my first kind of launch management gig in the entrepreneurial space. And before that, so a little bit more about my history and why I'm kind of marrying the two. Like I was a health coach helping people with burnout, and that's how I was in this business coaching space, and they were helping me to grow my business with burnout. And I realized that yes, I can help heal the physical symptoms of burnout through health coaching, but it was really a mindset issue. Like why were my clients overworking, always striving? Like there was all this inner work that we had to do to get their cortisol levels to really calm down. And through that, I was like, oh, some of it was time management issues. Some of that was, money issues. Some of that was energy management. And with the time management, it's a lot of them were in the people pleasing mode where so many people were coming onto their calendars and not like by appointment, like they weren't coaches, but people were monopolizing time on their calendars. And then all of a sudden, they had no time to work out. They had no time to meal prep. They had no time to themselves. And if they were entrepreneurs, they were always putting everyone else first and they never had time for their business. Now, actually, number four is time, money, and energy. So we're going to get to that in a bit. But all of that to say, that was like how I did the burnout plus the business. And as we were diving deeper into some of these mindset issues, a lot of the trauma work that I did as a mental health specialist in the army, like helping people with PTSD, I was like, oh, like these are triggers. Like something triggered this person that made them behave this certain way, and therefore, thoughts, beliefs, actions, and results. They were going down this hole, and I was like, oh well, that's why the results are the way that they are, because of the thought patterns and the belief patterns that they were like holding on to. And so that's why this masterclass, addressing the fears of launching, is so it's just really so good. So um all of that aside, like, this class is going to be really good. Okay, so if you're still tracking, if you can hear me, see me, let me know, because I'm not showing anyone is active right now, but that could be just a tech issue or a glitch. I don't know. But let me know if you're here. Oh, the other thing that I wanted to say was, as I was working with my clients, and we are talking about fears and traumas, part of my backstory is I have two children, and I was in a narcissistic abusive relationship. And you can go read all about it in my book on Amazon, kaliota.com/author. Because some people ask me where do I get the book. And so that's just it's not a shameless plug. It's just a regular plug. If you want to read my story, you can go ahead and read it. There's so many people that are getting transformations just from reading my story, which is just by the grace of God, because I didn't want to write that story. Okay. Anyway, this is important because, all right, I am a domestic abuse survivor. My kids are also survivors of abuse. Um, and what was happening in my kids' brains, right? They suffered major depression, major anxiety, PTSD, but it's like CPTSD, like chronic PTSD. And it's now showing up in them as an adult. So my children are 25 and 22, and my grandchild is supposed to be born today. My first grandchild is supposed to be born today. And just saying, you know, um, by the grace of God, we survived. But a lot of those fears and the codependency and just the mindset, the brainwashing, all of that stuff, right? I was a strong person, and then I got into this abusive relationship, and my self-worth, my value, my confidence was slowly eroded away until I realized I didn't I didn't really have anything left. And I know a lot of you who follow me probably resonate with that. And um, going back to the archetypes and why I created those archetypes, and we're going to talk about the archetypes here and how it's related to fears in this masterclass. But the reason why I created those archetypes is because I was seeing patterns. My brain is very good at picking up patterns. It's just something that I've always loved to do. Even with, like, my mom used to buy me books like problem solving for kids. I don't even know where she got them from, but I used to love those books. They would just give you problems and riddles and just having to solve it. I love murder mysteries on Hallmark. I don't like the really gruesome ones, but I love detective shows. I like finding out like the who done it. Because anyway, problem solving, I it's one of my big things. And so as I was working with these different clients with their launches, it was just so weird, because I was in a lot of these coaching containers, and the people who are joining the coaching containers, and these are my clients' coaching containers. Okay, so I'm behind the scenes watching how the clients are showing up to the call, and then but also seeing my clients who are coaching these people manifesting similar fears, but just on a greater scale. So I'm telling you, If you're feeling any of the fears we're going to talk about today, it's not like every person at every level experiences these fears. So, you know what? Before we begin, sometimes just talking about the word fear will just drop some anxiety. So, why don't we take a deep breath and just kind of relax and breathe in a bit. So I really want this time to be a time of looking within and checking in with ourselves, not so that we can commiserate and say, "Oh, I have that too." Well, yes, self-identification is important, but I want to normalize these fears, not from a place of victimhood, but a place of victory, because we're going to be going through specific strategies to overcome these fears so that you can actually have a fearless launching experience, right? And your launches will be totally lit up from the inside out because you're going to be healed or healing, right? Healing is a process. You're going to be healing these wounds, these fears. So the next time you show up for your next launch, when we have these fears in check, we can show up fearlessly online and just knock it out of the park. Okay. Hold on. Okay. Number one is fear of failure. And this specifically is for my powerhouse archetypes. And I have notes here, so just bear with me. So, first, how do we define fear of failure? One is to believe that you won't succeed or achieve your goals, and you'll be judged as a result of not hitting your goals or your targets. Now, this is huge for the powerhouse archetype whose drivers are money and success, right? And when we don't hit those goals, it can lead to anxiety, self doubt, and a lack of confidence. Although she's really self-confident, but when she doesn't hit those goals, it just reaffirms that maybe she's living in imposter syndrome and maybe she can't actually do that. So there is this kind of like wavering confidence where um it this personality type, although she likes to live and do things on her own, it does require a lot of mindset support because she has big goals. She has a lot of big things and she's totally a high achiever, right? But she wants to do a lot of big things in her life. But there are just some mindset blocks that she has to work through in order to get to those high achieving goals that she has for herself, right? And it's not only the big goals, but comparing yourself to others, especially when you're in these high level masterminds, right? You're comparing yourself to these other coaches who are out here like, oh, I just had another 5-figure launch and everyone's talking about it. I recently posted this on my Instagram feed, but right, everyone's comparing themselves inside of these masterminds. And sometimes it's really hard to not go into a slump when you see all your peers around you making or having the success that you want and you're not. And so some of that we talk about in the lit up launch formula. One, maybe what you're doing is not working for you. And two, like the confidence that they have is because they are super lit up with their offers. They are super lit up with, how they're showing up online and they're just, you know, feeling themselves for lack of better terms. And when you are literally feeling yourself, you're feeling good about what you're doing, your work in the world, your methods, like how you're showing up online where it's not icky, you're not feeling that type of way. That's when you create that lit up launch. And that's when we knock it out of the park. Okay. When we're out here trying to apply the guru based formulas in our business. Oh, well, I bought this system from this person and you're trying to reverse engineer it to work for you. Like it's just going back to trying to fit into someone else's mold. And if you are a powerhouse, you do not like to fit into someone else's mold, right? You are the usually the pioneer, you're the forerunner, and it just becomes this cycle of like, oh, I bought this formula, so therefore it should work. Because as a powerhouse, you want that guaranteed success, right? If you're going to invest in something, you want that ROI, that you want that return. But at the same time, it's really hard for you sometimes to apply these guru tactics or whatever because you see everyone else doing it. So therefore, you're like, well, I don't want to do what everybody else is doing, even though this is guaranteed like proven results. There's something within you that kind of like eats, it kind of it deflates you when you have to apply the strategy that everyone else is applying, and it just doesn't feel good to you. So, um, so how do we overcome the fear of failure? One, we can reframe failure as a learning opportunity, right? I didn't really address this, but you're going to have failed launches, right? And we say fail, maybe not a complete failure, but for the powerhouse, if you don't hit your target, it's an automatic fail, right? If just when your parents are telling you, oh, it's straight A's or nothing, it's the same mentality. But what we have to do is reframe those failures as learning opportunities, right? So instead of viewing failure as, this something that's completely negative, how can we take this perceived failure and learn from it, right? Then that's why I have, the post launch session built into the Lit of Launch program. Because one, we're going to be talking about your launch as we're going through each and every step, and so we can make those tweaks along the way. But even at the end, like having that after action review or that post mortem, whatever you want to call it, looking, like reviewing the tape, so to speak, looking at the actions that you took, the results, and going backwards. Okay, these are the results, but what actions did I take? But what was I believing in those moments when I was taking that action, right? Because these our thoughts, beliefs, actions produce the results, right? And you can take these learnings and use them for your next launch to fuel your success for your next launch. Because if you're not learning from this launch and using it to drive and make changes for your next one, right? What's the definition of insanity? Is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting the same result. No, you have to up level your launch each and every time. And then two, you have to set realistic expectations, right? If we keep moving the carrot, I mean, yes, we should be going for bigger and better, but if the carrot is not within reach, right, that is not a realistic expectation. So one, we're not, and for powerhouses, this is really important. I'm not telling you to lower the bar so that you can reach it, and because that also deflates you as a powerhouse. But what I'm saying is make them more realistic. Look at your data, look at, your resources. What can you actually accomplish so that it's doable and you can actually hit it? Because one, that's how we combat imposter syndrome, right? We have to come at it from a place where, okay, we're feeding our brains information that success is actually possible. Because when you keep moving the carrot forward, or it's like success is never possible. It keeps moving, and that's why you feel burnt out, because this carrot keeps moving and everything that you do is never good enough, and it's like, ugh. And then each and every time you move the carrot, and we move the carrot on ourselves, let's be honest, because that's how we were conditioned, right? It's like our parents kept moving the carrot for us. Oh, not good enough. Try harder, try better, or do better. Every time this carrot was moving forward, we felt like a failure. And that's why imposter syndrome is so high with powerhouses is because of this carrot moving phenomenon. And the last one is to take action, right? The more action that we take, the more we will build up the resilience and our confidence, and that imposter syndrome will go away. And if we're taking action that leads to results, right, we have to leave the carrot there in an achievable range. When we hit that, that is going to just help build our confidence even more and help us really to get rid of imposter syndrome. Okay. Speaking of imposter syndrome, number two is fear of judgment. And this one is really big for my perfectionists. And especially because a lot of perfectionists probably love language as words of affirmation. So um, when we don't hit our goals, we have the fear of being negatively evaluated or criticized by others. And this fear leads to self doubt, anxiety, lack of confidence. It's similar to the powerhouse, but it's it's slightly different. And again, these fears are not like, okay, if you have this fear, or if you are a powerhouse, you probably have this fear. I'm saying it's the one that probably relates the most to your archetype. And again, if you haven't taken it, go to burnoutarchetypequiz.com, get your archetype, and go ahead and leave me a comment and tell me your archetype and just tell me if this is resonating with you, right? Just say yes. Oh my gosh, this is so good. Um, and also, for the fear of judgment also pops up for people who are working in a male dominant environment. And I know for me, um, there was this like underlying joke we used to say with the women who worked in the oil and gas field is we have to work twice as hard for half of the recognition. And it was insane. Um, and some of the causes of this fear of judgment is, again, perfectionism and high self expectations. We talked about that carrot moving, um, and feeling like we have to work harder, not necessarily in a male dominated environment, which, but there is a lot of that that happens in that environment. But just feeling like we have to prove ourselves, right? And we're trying to prove ourselves to avoid that negative feedback and that criticism. We have and another thing, another characteristic or cause is we have, again, past experiences of criticism or rejection, right? We our offers, it's something that we've worked on. It's like, oh, and it's kind of like our baby, like I said yesterday, and then we put it out into the world, crickets. Like that just reinforces that fear of judgment. And like, what are some of the thoughts that you're thinking when you put something out there and you got crickets or you didn't get the feedback that you wanted? Put them in the comments, because I'm sure a lot of people will also resonate with those thoughts that you're thinking, because it happens with pretty much every single one of my clients. It's phrased differently, but the underlying theme is the fear of judgment and criticism when they put their baby out into the world. And it ties back to how we felt as children. Let's say we made a picture and we worked so hard on it. We gave it to our parents and it was like, "Oh, that's nice," especially for parents who expect a lot. And, how did it feel when they didn't put it on the fridge and like praise it and like, "Oh my god, my child's the best. Like she's a genius. She's a prodigy." Right? When we didn't get those words of affirmation from our parents, it made it really hard to receive, or receive love and not feel rejected, right? So some of the things to help reduce the fear of judgment. One, you got to work on your confidence. We talked about that in the last one, but how we can build up that confidence in a strategic way. Because yes, it's one thing to work on your mindset, but strategically, what you can do is, right, focus on your strengths and your accomplishments. A lot of times perfectionists want to focus on all the negative, like what went wrong. You can totally have that list available, but I will challenge you, for that list of everything that went wrong, you need to go in and say, hey, this is there's an exercise that I have my clients do. For every negative, you have to list a positive. And then there are some statistics that say it's, I don't know, there's a ratio 3 to 1, 5 to 1. For every negative thought, you have to have 3 or 5 positive affirmations to kind of overcome those negative thoughts. So the more that you can reduce the negative thoughts, less focusing on what could go wrong and focus on your strengths and accomplishments instead, that will help build your confidence. And then two, seeking feedback from trusted sources, like a mentor, like a peer. Like if your peer has recently gone through something, like getting their feedback is really cool. Or like coaching. That's why coaching is so important. And I will never in business like not have a mentor. I don't think I've ever not been with a mentor ever since I started having a business. Even when I was in network marketing, like back, gosh, when my kids were born, I started in network marketing, but I also grew up in network marketing because my mom did it, my grandma did it, and so I was exposed to the arena of network marketing. But wait, why do you go to all those weekly meetings? Why do you always have these training calls? Is because you need mentorship. Like the biggest block in business is the mindset because there's nobody else to tell you to keep going, right? Like it's not a job where there's like negative consequences, like you lose your job if you don't show up. Like if you don't show up for yourself in your own business, right? The only negative consequence is a lack of money, which we're going to talk about later. But really, like who's driving this bus of your business? It's just you. So not having a coach or a mentor in your back pocket while you're building your business, while you're launching, my personal opinion, I don't know. Tell me if you've launched something before and it worked out. Like, prove me wrong. I would really love to hear a success story where I did it on my own. I didn't have a mentor, and I'm just like a prodigy at business. And we're also talking about non-paid mentors. Like, if you're following someone on social media, if you're reading self-help books, that's still coaching and mentoring. Okay, so like I said, if you're doing this without coaching and mentoring, kudos to you. You're probably a prodigy, and I don't know. Tell me your ways, because I'm looking for a good coach and mentor always. And this last one is what I talk about, right? Embracing your uniqueness, or I call it owning your audacity. Like the word audacity, and I don't know if you saw that Greta Thunberg meme. Like, how dare you? It cracks me up every time. But it's like she's saying like, how dare you have the audacity to, pollute our oceans or whatever she's preaching about. I don't really follow her, so I don't know. I know she just talks about global warming and stuff like that. But when we embrace our own audacity, like what makes us unique, what unique perspectives do we have in our businesses as coaches, or even if you're a consultant, like I have my own unique perspective on launching. There's so many launch managers, like I've met them in the field, right? You just meet at these conferences, or you're serving at this event, or like your clients are having like these collab events, and then you just meet other launch managers and whatever. There's right, I have a unique perspective on launching, which is how to launch without fear, how to, and the case in point, as I was looking for a name for this class, I Googled fearless launching and it's trademarked. So, anyway, I don't know how long I can use this for a masterclass, but um, her way of helping people get away from fear in launching is to give you a 7-step system that you can follow. And I'm just like, it doesn't make sense to me because the techniques that you use, yes, I would say the mechanics are the same, right? You need lead gen, you need sales, you need marketing, you need onboarding, you need client care. You need all of those elements in your launch formula, but each, like, what you're doing in each section, right? How you lead gen is different for each archetype. How you do sales is different for each archetype. Like, if you like getting on coaching calls, right? That's usually the popular archetype. If you hate coaching calls and you're a total introvert, these are more my perfectionists who like to work on things behind the scenes. You probably do like a launch email series to get people to buy. Totally different mechanisms, same map, right? The launch map is the same, but different mechanics go into each section based on your archetype and what feels good to you. That's what makes it a lit up launch. Okay, we are on number 3. So this is fear of financial loss. And this one speaks to, right, you've already sold, you've already invested so much money into your business already, and it feels so. There's this thing called sunk cost. You go all in on this one guru, you bought like $10,000 package, and you feel like you have to implement all the things that this coach or this guru has taught you about launching because you bought the program. And then obviously there's something wrong with me if this thing is not working because it worked for all of these other people that you see on the sales page, which is why you bought, right? You go to a webinar. This is a webinar launch formula, by the way, right? You go to a webinar and then you have all these slides. I I've had to manage all people who use the webinar launch formula. Okay. So at the end, right, you have the offer stack. Then you, or like even like during the webinar, they'll see these testimonials like, oh yeah, so blah 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 blah. Just say, right, fear of financial loss. Oh, I had a client, right? But so that's part of the formula is you're seeding these client testimonials the whole way. And, and so, but if that feels icky to you, but yet you spent $10,000 to buy this webinar launch formula, I don't even know how much it costs. But the sunk cost of what you invested in that is what's making you keep using this antiquated launch strategy, one that doesn't fit your archetype, doesn't fit your personality. It feels icky and sleazy to you to follow this formula, but yet you keep trying it because, oh my gosh, it worked for all those people. I saw the client testimonials during the webinar. I saw it on the web page, and some of them will even go as far as to have these 5-day challenges, and then they'll have like a client success interview. Or even if you go to because I've also managed live events, so you go to a live event, they have a client success panel on the third day. Guys, that's part of the formula, right? The client success panel is huge to get people to buy because what you want, what they have. And so you buy yet another. I'm a My husband kind of banned me from going to business conferences because I get suckered in. Because I'm like, oh, until I realized that that was what was happening. Because I would pick up clients at these events, which is also why I used to go to them. But anyway, that's how I started working with these higher level entrepreneurs. I would go to these conferences and people would s- I would get people to say like, "Oh yeah, then like, she knows what she's doing," and then like, "Oh my gosh, can I hire you?" And that's how my client base was growing at the time. Um, all of that to say sunk cost. So the fear of financial loss is really big. And especially when we've invested high ticket into these coaching programs, it it really does a number on us when it doesn't work, and that just adds to the fear. So one, like how to manage these, and I'm not a financial coach, but this is just like finance 101. Create a budget, right? Knowing how much you can spend. Like if you wanna, what I have a money coach, right? But she talks about blow money, and I think Dave Ramsey talks about it too, where you have money that's set aside for you to go and do shiny objects. And I have a coach, and he uses this he uses this analogy, and um he says, okay, if one of his clients wants to buy something as a shiny object thing, he's like, okay, you can buy it, but y- whatever that thing cost, you have to put double away in your savings first before you can go ahead and buy it. It's part of how he helps to curb his clients' impulse spending and shiny object spending. So I was like, that's kind of genius. But anyway, creating a budget, right? If you want to be able to spend money and you want to go blow your money on, something just to figure out. Sometimes our brain needs to buy things in order to say, okay, yeah, that really wasn't for me. And it can help with imposter syndrome at times, but hey. Another thing in the finance is diversifying your revenue streams, obviously. But as coaches, we have so much at our disposal. But the one thing I will say, the launch formula, you can use the same launch formula for whatever product that you're selling, right? So say you have one-on-one coaching right now, and then that picks up, you want to do a group coaching program. The mechanism of how you launch will not change. It's just the content that goes inside each section of the lit up launch formula is just going to shift a little bit. Because, right, talking about digital products is way different than talking about coaching, but essentially the results are the same, right? You want to give people a similar result for the product. They're just getting it in a different model. We'll just take potatoes, for example, right? They're getting the nutritional value of a potato, but one is in the form of a French fry, one is in the form of a mashed potato, and even French fries. One is a crinkle fry, one is a, I don't know, cross cut fry, like Chick-fil-A. Oh my gosh, I love those. So the launch model is the same. It's just what the content that goes in each piece will change based on your offer. But your overall results will not change. I mean, yes, if you're doing a whole brand new program, then you'd probably have to go back and do another custom launch build. But anyway, yeah. And then seek financial support, right? Do you want a finance coach? And that's not really what we're talking about. Well, you can get a finance coach, someone that helps you with your money mindset. Or you could also search out for loans, grants, some, some form of money that will help you, like pay off debt or help sustain your business as it's growing, so that your bank account is not feeling this and you're not getting into desperate energy when you're like, oh my gosh, my bank account is low. So then you're out here trying to sell with desperate energy, and your audience can feel that. No, like get your finances to an even baseline, so that your actions are not driven by what your bank account looks like. Oh my gosh, there's two more things that I do want to talk about, but I have another appointment coming up on the hour. I didn't realize I was going to talk this much. Let's see if I can get through it. Okay, so the money one was pretty much for every archetype. This one is fear of wasting time and energy. And this mostly applies to the philanthropists because these are the people who are people pleasers and have a hard time saying no, right? They have multiple responsibilities and limited time. But the reason why they get into that conundrum is because of time blindness. They actually don't know how long something is going to take. Then they overcommit. They say yes to everything. One, and also they don't have clarity. Like they don't have clarity of their schedule. So they say yes to, and doesn't even have to be about business. Or you can say, "Oh yeah, yes, I want to like do this program or whatever." But yet, when you look at the time commitment, like you actually don't have any time in your schedule to do it. That's one. Or say you take on like another ministry or another nonprofit, and we're not talking about clients. We're talking about other things that could, impede your schedule, or you say yes to your kids joining another sport, not realizing the time commitment. And so you're just kind of eroding away the resource that you have in the area of time and energy when you do this. But the bottom line is you have issues with boundaries and you have a hard time saying no. So what you have to do is, right, one, set priorities. Like what are your priorities? Like what's important to you, and make your choices based on that. And then two, if you just have a lot going on, like you already overcommitted, what are some tasks that you can actually delegate and get off your plate? Like even carpooling, if you can get, you know, ha- start a carpool group so you don't have to take your kids to soccer every day, but maybe once a week because you're splitting it up between five other moms. How much more time that would give you back, right? And especially taking breaks and self-care. If you don't have the time and the energy, how you repair that is you got to take a breather. You got to cut things out. And I have the AED formula that I usually use for business is automate, eliminate, and delegate. Whatever you can automate, like if you can meal plan, right? We're talking about just regular stuff. You can automate, your business. You can do that, but you can also automate meal planning. There's so much you can automate. Eliminate. What are you going to say no to? If you're already committed, what are you not going to recommit to? Right? Just because you've said yes in the past to hosting the monthly barbecue at church, you don't have to anymore. Like your life and the circumstances have changed. You're going all in on your business. You don't have to keep saying yes, right? And delegate. Like we already talked about that carpooling thing. The last thing we're going to talk about is the fear of giving up, which um out of all the archetypes, the popular archetype is the most susceptible to this one because they have a lot of ideas and dreams, right? You're always dreaming. As a popular archetype on the time wheel, you live in the idea quadrant. An ideal, but idea. We have a lot of ideas, but not a lot of energy to execute. And you're always changing, you're always pivoting because um whatever this is, your dream, whatever, you get very bored. So you're like, oh, well, this didn't work. Let's try something else. Well, this didn't work. Let's try something else. And you're always chasing this dream, but yet it's very hard for you to attain because you keep hopping from idea to idea, and it just, yeah, it's like a revolving door. And so the fear that you have, and what is the driver? Like why do you keep pivoting? Why do you keep changing? Why do you keep putting out different offers? Is because you feel like despite your best efforts, your business won't succeed and you'll have to abandon those dreams. And when it doesn't pan out like you had intended, it really just it saps your productivity, it saps your motivation, and it's really hard for you to stay focused and productive. So some of the causes, right, is that pressure to succeed quickly, right? Let's think about it. Coaching and online business is the only industry where we boast about what we make. We weren't going around the office when we worked at our jobs like, oh my gosh, I just made this today. Or maybe if you're in sales, right, and you have all of that. But still, I would say sales is also part of business because if you're earning commissions, then it's sales and marketing, and like you kind of have your own business, your own brand. So that's a whole nother ball game. Because what if clients are referred to you and you have to retain your clients and blah blah blah. So that's kind of like an off. But if you have just a regular job, you're not over there like, oh yeah, I made more money than you. Or like I you know what I mean? No other business or industry boasts and brags about how much income they make except for ours, which is fascinating. And like if we're not hitting the goals that our colleagues, peers are hitting, like, it really does a number on, we already talked about our confidence and that pressure. It just adds to that pressure to succeed even more quickly. And especially the popular archetype, you're like, oh well, okay, oh Sally bought this course, so and she got success. So maybe I'll get success, right? You're always looking for the next best idea, and that shiny object. Girl, you gotta stop the shiny objects, okay? I mean, I want to invite you to work in my program, but we will work like when you work with me inside my program, we will work on curbing your appetite. Like I said, I used to be a health coach. I know how to get people to curb their appetites, their wants, and suppress that, like from a food point of view, but it also applies to shiny object syndrome, right? Curb that appetite to buy things. Telling you, telling you. Um, so again, lack of support or mentorship is another cause for giving up, right? When we don't have that support, we don't have that person to mentor us and tell us, "Hey, this is normal." One of my clients, she asked about she had a live event and then she was like, "Why do I feel exhausted?" I think I talked about this yesterday. And I was like, "That is normal because this was your main event." Of course, when you give it your all, right? If you're talking about boxing or MMA or whatever, the main event, like everyone's focused on it, and there's this whoosh that happens after the main event. There's a lot of buildup that happens, and you get the pre-fight, all of the buildup, all the marketing and the commercials and everything leading up to the main event. Once the main event happens, like what happens? People start leaving the arena. So there is a natural whoosh and a downslope. And she's like, I feel exhausted. It's because, right, the adrenaline rush going into the main event. And after the main event, it's like your body can actually release and stop holding all of that energy, and it can actually relax. So, oh my gosh, I'm looking at the time. I have to go. Let me just get through this last set real quick. So, how to overcome this fear of giving up? One, you got to set clear goals and priorities. Because back to that carrot thing, if the carrot keeps moving forward, you're going to get discouraged. You're going to want to feel like giving up. And you need to define what success means to you. Success may not mean a monetary result. Success, like for me, in my business, I realized like having the energy and the capacity because I've been burnt out before, just really working on expanding my capacity. That's the result that I was working on in these past couple of quarters. So that was a goal for me and I hit it and I feel good. um, Build a support network, right? That's why I love being in mastermind. That's why I love coaching, having a support network. And right, we are the sum of the five people that we hang out with. And if you're hanging out with Karens that are always complaining, no wonder your mindset always feels like giving up, or even like your church friends, if they're in this negative down spiral. Like you don't want to be hanging out with these people. Start changing your circle. Like you don't have to abandon your friends, but start getting more like positive influences into your inner circle so that you can start up leveling your mindset and playing a bigger game. Last for this section is celebrate your successes. So many of us don't want to celebrate our successes because we think like, "Oh, why should I celebrate that?" Like, it wasn't that big because we were conditioned, right? The carrot moving. The carrot keeps moving because our parents were very like that's just how we were raised, right? So when the carrot keeps moving, we don't celebrate it because we don't ever actually get to eat the carrot because the carrot kept moving. So we don't actually have any successes to celebrate. Our parents never celebrated us. We may have had coaches or teachers that had celebrated us when we hit certain achievements. I'm not talking about like everybody gets a trophy. Like that is such a Debbie Downer. But right, when you get that affirmation, like you did a good job, like you can tell yourself that you did a good job. Like it doesn't have to be your guru or your mentor telling you that you did a good job because that's just right. Sometimes the gurus replace the parental support that we had. And so whatever we didn't get from our parents, we're projecting onto these gurus that we're buying into. And of course, we're going to be let down because that's not the container that the, that they're in. Like they're not supposed to be a surrogate parent to you. They're a coach, they're a mentor. It's different. One more. Stay focused on your why. Right? This is what I want to leave you guys with. Stay focused on your why. Why did you start in your business? It gets antiquated, but why are you in this business? And if you are in business to make money, then cool. But when the money roller coaster starts happening, you need more to anchor you and ground you. Okay. And when you have that why and you build your goals around that why, not just like monetary goals, but like how you, like for me, like how I wanted to feel in my body, how I wanted my cortisol to be under control, how I didn't want to react and have these cortisol spikes in my body when I was doing something hard or like mentally hard and it would put me into fight or flight mode. Managing that fight or flight for me and controlling the cortisol was important to me and it was a goal. And so, like, just make sure you have the right why and the right goals. Okay. And that they match so that you can actually hit them and get the results that you want. And again, having these fears is a normal part of this entrepreneurial journey that we're on. But like I said in the beginning, I'm here to support you through that, right? We have the Voxer coaching. And this is the 6-week lit up launch intensive, where if you're actively going through a launch or if you're going into a launch, you'll have the support. You'll get me for unlimited Voxer support. And I've been working with a couple of clients on their launches and I tell them just drop it in the chat, like just send me a voice memo, text memo, whatever you want, screenshots, links. We look over all of those things and we work through it. And Voxer is where the mindset support happens. And there are calls like if you need a call, like we need to be on Zoom and you need to show me something, like we can do Zoom calls as well. But the important stuff is the launch mapping session where, like I said, it's a $500 value. I normally charge $500 for it as a standalone. I'm including it in this program because it's really important to look from the front to the back of all your launches and all the different phases of your launch. Like looking at it on one sheet of paper is so important so that you're not expending a lot of energy, wasting time, money, and energy on things that don't even line up on your map. It's like having your GPS kind of go, "Roar," and then you like, no, that's not how it works. The GPS takes you to, okay, takes you to your result. So anyway, if you are ready to just talk about it, I am going to share the link with you here. So you can go ahead and book a call with me, kylieota.com/consult. Get on my calendar. We can talk about your launch. We can talk about all the things that you know you want to know about launching, like where you are, all of that in your space. And if you have any questions, go ahead and put them below, and I will answer them when I get back from taking the dog to doggy daycare. Okay. Thank you for being here, and I love you. Talk to you soon. Bye.